In the 1980s, companies were often told to position themselves as far-flung conglomerates to avoid some industry-specific risks. More recently, you often hear that you should be very narrowly focused on a small range of products to be able to leverage your resources. Our study shows that neither of these two extremes is really the ideal if you want to succeed in the long run. Companies that want to achieve sustainable competitive advantage position themselves as related diversified businesses. That means they grow into businesses that are similar, so they're able to leverage their resources, but they also are able at the same time to avoid risks that are associated with being too narrow. Allianz, our top company, and Aachener Münchner, our comparison company, highlight this difference. Allianz started off in 1890 as a transport insurance company. And while they grew that business, they also started to slowly branch out into industrial insurance. This allowed them to leverage some of the resources that they had developed in transport insurance business. In the early part of the 20th century, then they took a further step by growing into life insurance. First in a joint venture to pick up some knowledge, some skills from another company, and eventually when they felt they have these skills that are required, by doing it by themselves. In contrast, Aachener Münchner was very narrowly focused. They started off as a fire insurance business and virtually stayed that way for 100 years. They missed the opportunities that the industrialization provided. Their salespeople were saying, well, we don't have the skills to sell to industries, so let's stick to our narrow focus. That's wrong. That's simply wrong. And I think the leadership should have forced these people to develop these skills. Later on, in the period immediately after the Second World War, they were hit even harder because they were focused so narrowly on rural customers. And a lot of these rural areas were in East Germany. When the Russians moved in and nationalized industries, Aachener Münchner lost 70% of their assets. Sure, they couldn't know that the Russians move in, but they could have positioned themselves more broadly early on, and they would have automatically had more business also in the West, where more industrialization has happened, and they would have avoided some of that pain. So our insight from the study really is, if you want to succeed in the long run, position yourself as a related diversified business. This way you can leverage your resources, you can use some of the skills that you already have, and you avoid some of the focus, the risks that are associated with too narrow focus.